You know, it's kind of like the Bad News Bears, you know, going back that far into the 70s.
They had huge heart, lots of guts.
We wanted to play as much as we could. You know, that's the passion that we had for it.
They've come from nowhere nationally to be a national powerhouse.
In the early 1970s, soccer was a little-known sport in the United States, not to mention Colorado. But in the town of Durango, hidden in a quiet corner of the Rocky Mountains, a seed was growing.
Soccer in the 70s just was, you know, pretty much non-existent, even in, you know, in the United States in general. The thing we all did have in common was we all had a passion for soccer. We loved soccer. And there was no structure. There was no reason why we had to go out and practice or do anything. We did it just because we wanted to. It was just a club of guys that would get together and just because they loved to play soccer. We had to buy all our own equipment. We had to buy our own balls. We had to buy our own uniforms. And the college would give us a stipend of gas money. Every game we played was on the road. Nobody would come here and play us, so we were pretty desperate just to play.
During the 70s, the loosely organised club travelled throughout the Southwest. The team never lost a game or played a home game. By the early 1980s, a group of motivated students created an official club team and continued seeking competition from anyone who would agree to play.
We would try to find teams, whoever, just so that we would be able to play. We wanted to play as much as we could. You know, that's the passion that we had for it. I remember some people would stay at places, some would pitch tents down by the river. So you'd play a soccer game, not have anywhere to shower, Saturday, next day, you know, and you know, by then you're ready to not hang out with your teammates as much, but you know, it was interesting.
The team grew steadily and began winning games against larger schools.
As it progressed, not at the start, but as it progressed, and it started finally getting out in the newspaper, the school newspaper, word of mouth, that type of thing, it got to be really popular. And so we started developing a really strong fan base.
And we were playing, that was the football practice field at the time. And we were allowed to use that for this game because it was close to the right length. So we're playing and it's halftime at 1 o'clock. Well, 1 o'clock was the start time for the football game. The athletic director came over and the stands are starting to get filled for football. And he came over and said, "Dave, you're going to have to stop the game." I said, "What?" He said, "You're going to have to stop." I said, "But, you know, we've got a team from Denver, they've come down. And by the way, we're ahead. No, I don't think I can do that." He goes, "You really need to. We feel like it's going to be a disruption to the football game if you keep playing."
It was interesting to see, you know, it's interesting to see how the attitudes about soccer at that time is compared to now. You know, where now I feel it's a lot more embraced by the institution, obviously, and it's just different. It's just different attitudes about soccer compared to what it was back then.
You could start to see a groundswell to promote soccer and start to move it along at Fort Lewis College. And our hope always was to create a varsity team at Fort Lewis. And a lot of that, quite frankly for me, was predicated on the incredible talent that was coming here just as a student body. There was no need to recruit, it was here on the campus.
By the late 1980s, soccer, the underdog sport once overlooked by all but a passionate few, was on track to become the school's next varsity-level team. One of the strongest advocates for a varsity soccer team was Peggy Sharp, executive assistant to then-president Dr. Joel Jones.
Historically, they've just passed the story down that I really pushed hard as I could push, to get soccer to be a varsity sport, maybe just a little bit sooner.
She had a voice that was stronger than anybody else with reference to the decision about soccer. So to call her the mother of Fort Lewis soccer really is not an overstatement. But in her mind, soccer was the sport for Fort Lewis College. And obviously history proved her to be right.
In 1990, men's soccer became a varsity sport, and in 1991 played its first full season, coached by J.D. Browning. In 1992, the team needed a new coach. The name of a famously strict residence hall director came up.
And the players came in and discussed a man who was already on campus. Said they liked this guy, Jeremy Fishbein. He knew soccer. They kept saying he really knows the sport.
You know, I didn't think I wanted to be a soccer coach at that point, and I guess the stars were aligned, and you know, spent 7 great years at Fort Lewis.
Fishbein got the job and swiftly began the serious task of shaping the soccer program from the ground up.
He'd had mostly walk-ons because it was a brand new program, and he was having them do a mile run. And I must add, it was pretty pathetic, and I think Jeremy would agree with me. And we're sitting there going, I'm just shaking my head going, oh my God, you know, this, and so is he.
Jeremy is a tough coach. I think any really good coach is tough. He drove a lot of kids out. He was hard. He was hard on his players. He was hard on everything.
You know, probably ignorance is bliss. That was my first coaching job, and I knew nothing but shooting for the stars, and we set our goals high. You know, things clicked, and it was just a great blend, you know, leadership and hunger, and once again, probably freshmen didn't know any different.
Early on, Coach Fishbein saw the need to build the program from within Durango's community. He arranged clinics and tournaments with the intention of not only creating a collegiate soccer program, but building a soccer community.
It's just a natural, you know, if you're going to have a collegiate team, you got to have the community behind you.
From 1992 to 1998, under Fishbein's leadership, the team captured numerous conference championships and broke into the top 20 in NCAA Division II rankings. The 98 season ended with the Skyhawks ranked 16th in NCAA Division II. The national ranking caught the attention of an ex-player from the casual club days of the 1970s, Martin Dirks.
I believe it was 1998. My children were playing soccer, and I would look in the news and stuff in LA Times, and I would just look to see what the collegiate teams were doing. And they have every collegiate team in the United States, and they would show the scores. And one day I'm looking in there, and there's Fort Lewis College. I go, we've got a soccer team now? So I kind of went on the internet, I looked it up, and hey, we weren't bad.
In addition to piquing the interest of past players, Coach Fishbein's success drew the attention of numerous soccer programs around the country. Following the 1998 season, Fishbein left the school to take a coaching position at another institution. Before he left, Fishbein helped usher in his replacement, Jeremy Gunn.
I was the assistant coach at Cal State Bakersfield and then the acting head coach for my last year there. And we had a tremendous rivalry with Fort Lewis College. Jeremy and I had talked back and forth. We'd had some great games against their team, some unbelievable battles, I guess. I had to even break up a fight the last year before I came here. So they were going, who's the guy? It's the guy who was pulling people off each other in a game. But no, I got to know Jeremy real well. We'd be on the phone a lot. And then when he looked to move on, he called me up and said, there's a great opportunity here. He'd love to put my name forward. So it was really helpful in me getting the position here and getting the opportunity. When I arrived here in '99, I inherited an incredible group of players. I really still to this day don't know how Coach Fishbein brought this group together.
So Jeremy came in the spring season, going into our fall season, which was the '99 year. So he came in the spring season, and he set the tone right from the get-go. Yeah, it was pretty much his team right from the start. It seemed like, it wasn't his players, but it was his team. He really put a stamp on a team.
In '98, we wanted to go to nationals and show well, and we wanted to go to Seattle Pacific and beat them. In '99, we didn't want to go anywhere and beat anyone. We wanted them to come here and try to beat us. The big thing was when Jeremy Gunn came in, it was, he shook things up and he held us accountable and he got in our face if we needed it and didn't let us slide.
In Gunn's first year as head coach, the mature and hungry team dominated the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, storming their way through the NCAA Division II tournament and ultimately competing in the national championship game. The team would lose that game, but gain the support of a man who would eventually become a defining character for Fort Lewis soccer.
99, we go to the national championship game. That's when I called Jeremy and asked him if he could use any money, any help. I sit on the board of a charitable foundation, so I thought it was a great way to, give back to Fort Lewis.
It's incredible, really. I'm literally sitting in an office that was actually a janitor's closet. That's what it was over in the old gymnasium. Didn't have enough office spaces, and so if I actually leant back in my chair, I'd hit the assistant coach's chair. It was that small. I got a phone call, and Martin introduced himself, and he said, fantastic job this year. Would love to get involved with the program. What do we need to look at help-wise? And so I really didn't know what to expect. So, we need soccer players here, and to do that, we need scholarship money. And so, we discussed how we could move forward, and that's where really the whole program started to get built from that moment on.
Probably the most important factor in all this is the 99 team and getting it started. These guys, after they were done playing, they keep coming back. They're our greatest supporters. People need to understand that without that seed, it wouldn't have happened.
Being part of the 99 team was just something that I'll always remember as long as I live. It's a bond that we all have that you can experience, but it's hard to explain with people. We all felt that. It was just kind of an amazing time where everything came together.
I think, in my own estimation, up to 1999, I don't think a lot of people knew we had a soccer team. 1999 was, I think, one of the turning points, that the ranking, going to the national championship, finally caught our attention.
Coach Gunn used the community's excitement about the 1999 season to deepen the relationship between Fort Lewis soccer and the citizens of Durango.
But when you look at the on-field successes that were incredible, probably the biggest success outside of that was the incredible relationship we managed to foster. So as a result, our home games at Fort Lewis were one of the most exciting environments in the country.
Starting in the 2000 season, Coach Gunn began a multi-year process of building the next team.
2002 was really the beginning of all the future success we then had. We started the year absolutely awful. We had a ton of freshmen playing, guys like Brian Eisenbrown, Beach at the back, Nick Clark in goal, Cole Sweetser up front. We had a totally new slate, but because they all got thrown in at the deep end, because they all had to work hard together and kind of sink or swim, it really gave them an incredible grounding for the future successes.
In those rebuilding years, Martin Dirks' support would also make possible the construction of Dirks Field, completed in 2004. The field was the college's first soccer-specific complex and would become a welcome home for the soccer program and a dreaded high-altitude battlefield for opponents.
Creating the field, it gave us a home. It gave us that whole idea of being Fort Lewis College, way up in the mountains, a real tough fortress to come and play against a team. So I think that really gave us an identity.
To me, it's probably the most beautiful setting to play soccer in that you could possibly have. Nobody wants to come and play us. Those players will tell you it's hell. Your lungs burn. There's no way you can get prepared to come to Fort Lewis.
I have to put out a kudo to Mr. Martin Dirks, who has been the saintly savior of the men's soccer program for over a decade. Without his assistance, we would not be where we are today.
Backed by Dirks, the Durango community, and armed with their new fortress in the sky, the Skyhawks became a perennial force in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference. Coach Gunn would win Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference Coach of the Year 5 times, twice as co-coach. The team Gunn had been building since 2002 peaked in the dramatic 2005 season.
You know, they always talk as if in mythological terms almost about the 2005 year.
That season we knew that we had a great group of players, and so we had experience, we had confidence, and we weren't afraid to say we want to win a national championship.
And they had John Cunliffe.
Just an amazing player. You know, he's been the most successful player to come out of Fort Lewis College. So much fun to watch. You'd almost start laughing at some of the goals he'd score because normally get excited and celebrate, but the way he'd do things were just so incredible.
Cuts it across, excellent play to Cunliffe, who turns and does an excellent, my goodness, what a goal! Unbelievable. Unbelievable is actually the word, John Cunliffe. That was top draw.
I think by the end or the last third of the season, after the community saw what was going on the field, they believed in their heart that every game was winnable.
In 2005, the Fort Lewis men's soccer team achieved their ultimate goal. Fort Lewis won the NCAA Division II National Championship.
You know, we set out as a group of people to do something, and we managed to achieve that. And so this is something that the players deserve, and this is something that the community deserves.
The Skyhawks' success was celebrated beyond Durango and Colorado. Following their national championship in 2005, the Skyhawks were honored with the declaration of the first Fort Lewis College Soccer Day by Colorado Governor Bill Owens. Colorado's Congressman John Salazar also recognized the Skyhawks championship in the Congressional Record. In 2006, Fort Lewis once again went all the way to the NCAA Division II National Championship game, but lost the game 1-0.
In 06, I was a freshman, came in my first year, and it was meant to be for us to win it. And we just decided to play our worst game on the last day of the year, so it shattered our hopes.
Following this successful but ultimately disappointing season, the team would lose a number of seniors as well as coach Jeremy Gunn. The next 2 years would prove difficult for Fort Lewis. The young team began rebuilding under new head coach Tim Hankinson. The 2009 season began with the unexpected departure of Coach Hankinson. Now under the leadership of head coach Ogie Kennedy, the team that had watched their hopes shattered just 3 years earlier began a steady march toward a second national championship.
I think Ogie had a big part in reinstilling that grit and that determination, and I'm not going to lose. And Ogie said, if I ever become the coach of Fort Lewis College, I will win the national championship my first year. Lo and behold, the guy did it. The only NCAA coach to ever win an NCAA championship title in his first year.
I'm not surprised at all that it's developed into the level of competition that we have now. You know, a couple national championships, and I'm not surprised. To be able to accomplish what they have since they became a varsity team from the get-go, to be able to play the level that they have, in my mind and in my heart, they already are a dynasty. After all of these years, 30 years later, it's something so proud to be a part of.